What's up, guys? Brandon with Strict Vision Athletics. So here today we're going to be comparing the Monolith system. This is version 1, this is version 2. So both of these are outstanding options. If you guys have a Monster Lite, I know they go on both, this is a very, very smart choice for you if you are somebody who wants an advanced J-Cup. Now, what is the primary technology? What is a Monolith system? Let's just start there. So a Monolith system, both of these will work off the same basic principle, and that is that when I have my bar and I'm underneath it, when I let go and go up, the arms will retract. When that happens, I can do my lift in place. After that, I re-rack, the bar goes, and then it pulls back to the center. So that's the basic principle behind a Monolith system. It alleviates the need to lift off, step back. If you're doing a squat, for example, you don't have to step back, get your feet back in place, do your lift, then walk forward and rack. You should be able to lift up, do your lift in place, lean forward, fall into the J-Cup, and you're safer. Safety is kind of the principle behind the J-Cup technology. So what is the difference between these two? Why choose one over the other? So let's start with the aesthetics. I have a flair for aesthetics in my gym. Obviously, we want it to look good. Number 2 is clearly the winner on that. I love the design of this thing. I think it's so cool that they decided to laser engrave Rogue right here. It's not a sticker. It's got this really cool hand-threaded key that goes up here. More on that later. It's just got a very, very cool look. I liked version 1 when it first came out, but in all honesty, it's kind of, you got these big silver bolts, you got this big kind of donkey-looking metal piece. It's kind of loud and clunky. And another thing that I noticed, this isn't really the aesthetics, this is more the functionality. If you don't lock this thing in here with this second pin, which was a pain in the butt to do because you had to like reach in here, lock it in, and then it wouldn't go back all the way. It would hit the pin and it wouldn't do its full range of motion, so I had to pull that out or go in from the back. And in order to do that, I had to come back here on my system, pull it forward and clip through. Either way, it was sort of a problem because this would move without it. This thing can twist. The mounting capability is sort of the second thing I want to talk about here, and that's version 1. Version 1 mounting capability was an on and twist. Version 2 is very different. Version 2 incorporates a pin system, and it's designed to be left on your rack. Now, this is super easy if you're understanding that all you have to do is slide this up and down, and that's it. You don't have to undo it, and it's mounted on both sides. It's locked, so it won't move. It's not going to slide left and right. So if you're under the bar, this is very common. If you're underneath the bar for like a bench press, and you're not centered, and I have to move my bench press bar, well, this might move with me. Not this. Version 2 is going to stay locked in place. The bar is going to be stable. It's a very, very, very good option as opposed to number 1. Now, one thing, this may be the one and only thing that I noticed that I liked about version 1 more than version 2. Version 2 in the beginning, I don't know why, they included this like extra 3.5 inches of mount up here with a couple extra holes. The problem with that, at least on my rack, see my rack has the trolley system on it. So that would hit up here, which meant that my rack would like stop right here. That's as high as I could go with my Monolift version 2 when it first arrived, because it had this upper area that would hit the top of the trolley system. I'm like, well, I can't have that. It has 4 holes. I'll just select the bottom one. It mounts perfectly fine. In fact, it's the same. So I just made a cut, got rid of that, and now version 2 is perfect. But that being said, it was a flaw in the design as it pertained to my setup. So guys, before I go to the fabricator on these, I want to discuss one small problem that I see with the make and model, specifically as it relates to my rack. Now, if I was somebody who had a, enormous, although this is the Monster Lite, I don't understand why they did this. Scratch what I just said. This is a problem no matter what rack you have. The 2.0 Monolith, which I love, by the way, has one small but possibly big problem with the way it was designed. This area right here limits the height variability for the Monolith. So for me, this is as high as this can ever possibly go. Now, what I am going to do is I'm going to take this to a fabricator and I'm going to have him make a cut. It's going to make a cut along the same angle as you see the pin right now, so that this can slide up to the top be up against the top of my jammer arm, and gain another 3, maybe even 4 inches. Because right now, this is as tall as this could ever get on my rack. So it's a major, major issue, major dilemma for most exercises. Overhead shoulder press, anything standing, anything related to squatting. This is too low for me. It just is. So I'm going to bring this in. It'll be a very simple cut right here on both sides. And then from there, it will solve that problem on its own. So version 1 didn't have that. Version 1, as I mentioned, has a pin placement right here. It's up at the top. So however high I wanted to go, I could just place that in. And there we go. That's version 1. So that's the one and only thing that I think version 1 was superior, at least until I got my hands on it, made the cut, secured the rubber. Now it's perfectly fine. But that's the one and only thing. Everything else for version 2 is superior. Let's start with why. Like what is the difference in functionality other than the racking, other than the the size? There is some functional stuff that version 2 does that version 1 does not. Let's first talk about this key. So this is included with the actual system. The cool thing about this, it does 2 very, very cool things. It locks in place so that if you wanted a traditional J-cup setup, if you didn't want the Monolift technology to happen, if you wanted something close to the rack, you could do that. I personally haven't found a lift that I prefer doing that over the Monolift, but I have found the third variation on this to be something that I use as opposed to the Monolith. So, as I mentioned, there are 2 different things you can do here. So you've got that, which will lock it in place up against your rack, and then you can take this pen, and I can lock this in place off of my rack. Now for this, my favorite for this is standing military press. Standing military press, it requires that I lift up my bar, and then I step back a little bit to make a lift, but I don't want, in standing military press, I don't want the J-cup technology, because if it's out here and I lift up, well, okay, now I'm definitely gonna hit this thing. So I have to take a few steps backwards. Whereas if I lock this in place, now I can just lift off and I can do my lift right here. So there are certain lifts, again, I've only had this a couple weeks, so I'm playing around with it. There are certain lifts that having the J-hook locked in place will be superior for. So right off the bat, you can tell the functionality on this, doing those different things. Rogue put thought into this. Rogue knew that, okay, there's a flaw in the make on version 1. It doesn't lock in place. It's always a Monolift, and it has a smaller range of motion. That's another thing that I noticed with this bad boy as opposed to this guy. When this thing is free, this thing is really free. It's got a much larger bandwidth on where you can take your bar. If your bar is right here at its weighted point and you grab onto it and you want to pull it back a little further, then lift it off, you can do that. That's perfectly fine. It's a lot more free moving. It's got a bigger range of motion than version 1. Furthermore, version 2 has a bigger J-cup circumference here at the base. For those of you who lift with specialty bars, you're going to really appreciate this. If I take my Cadillac bar by Kabuki and I rack it on version 1, I have to really make sure, especially when it's in its back position, I need to really make sure that I get it in here. I've had it a couple times where I've racked it, let go, and it's come out because the Cadillac bar has a big old thick circumference. So with this, that's never happened. Never once. You've got a big, big base here. As soon as it gets in, it locks and it swings right out. Version 2, in all honesty, this is the best this is the best Monolith, J-cup, whatever you want to consider it, that you can possibly buy. Rogue did a very, very, very good job, as you would expect. It is Rogue. They have the best engineers in the world, and there was a lot of engineering that went into this. Last thing I'll mention, the storage size on this. As I mentioned, version 2 is left on the machine. It's left on the rack. It's designed to be that way. It's not designed to be taken off, put on the wall, and that's what I had to do with version 2. Because if you look at the size of these two, I mean, in their standing position right here, that's where version 2 is. So you've got another, call it 7 or 8 inches, where this thing is sticking out away from your machine. And take it from me, hitting this thing with your face sucks. I did it probably, 30 times. And that was with me not leaving it on here. Every time I would turn around the corner, there it was. And hitting this thing sucks so badly. So I elected to leave it off of my rack, put it on my wall. I used the wall control panels to store it. But every single time I would ever do an exercise with anybody, I would have to take it off the wall and put it on. and adjust it. And it was, I didn't realize until I got version 2 how much time I really was spending taking these off, putting them on, taking them off, putting them on. Version 2 changes everything. Now these can actually be left here. And when I leave these here, I don't leave them here. What I leave them is in this position right here. I leave them in the locked upright position because that cuts them back even more. Now, right there is where it stops. So that's probably like 9 inches. So that is a big, big difference in footprint from version 1 to version 2 if you want this to stay on your machine and you're somebody who you don't want to hit this. Furthermore, I recommend leaving this in a locked position when it's on your rack because you will see this. If it's like this, if it's off here and it's hidden, the top part is the only part that might hit you in the head, but you're going to miss it. If you come around the corner, there's a chance you might not see this. But if it's here, not only is it closer to the rack as a whole, but you're going to notice this. It's got a shape and a presence to it. Like you'll make your adjustment as you walk around. I've noticed. And it was a bit of an experiment for me because I'm a trainer. I have clients coming in here all the time. I am always in here. And this is a heavy, heavy trafficked area in my gym. The rack is where 90% of all the exercises happen. So everybody is walking around here. So I did a little bit of a, trial and error where I'm like, all right, if someone tells me they're going to hit their head on this thing, or if someone does hit their head on this thing, I'm going to get rid of it. Not get rid of it, but I'm going to put it on the wall. I'm going to figure out a way to store it elsewhere. Nothing has happened. It is evident that it's here. You're not going to hit it. So different from version 1. Version 1, I hit my head, clients hit their head. Everybody would hit this thing when they would walk by. It's a total hazard. It's a liability, but it was cool. And it has the same type of technology that this does. This is just far, far, far better. So I say wholeheartedly I endorse version 2. The only thing I would say is if you are somebody who has a height issue, again, I have the trolley system on my Monster Light, so my trolley system limits my height. I can only take it so high. I think I can this is probably just a little bit over 6.5 feet-ish. That's as tall as my arm can go. So if you have version 2, you're going to have to probably make that adjustment that I did. It's not a big deal. You definitely can do it, and it does not lose any functionality. I want to make sure I emphasize that quite heavily. When I made these cuts, it does exactly the same thing. I tested it before. I tested it after. I'm like, okay, this doesn't make any... Why would they even do this? Why would they design it this way? It doesn't make any sense. It was a flaw, in my opinion, but I love it now. Love it now. This is probably one of my favorite pieces of equipment that I went all out on. And I knew I had to have it. I'm like, I'm sold on it. I researched it. I knew what it did. It does exactly what it's supposed to, and it offers so many more versatility. And now it just adds so much life to the rack. It's a badass piece of equipment. So version 2, get it. Version 1, if you got them and you're happy with them, then stick around with them. But if it were me, I would upgrade to version 2.